I'm a little, um, but yeah. Give me a second. Give me a second, Yoshunda.
It's
Hold on.
okay. It's okay.
Hold on. Hold on.
Hey,
Huh?
Shagun.
Hi.
I was going to comment on it. One of the other things that I actually wrote is that the idea of survival was, like I said, to basically emasculate the man to make sure he doesn't come off as too strong and too powerful as a threat. But it's also about raising a strong woman. Like we were all told, don't depend on no man, make sure that you can handle your own. And I think that I agree with him on the fact that that has shifted and affected the construct of our families because we are, I guess, upsetting what is said to be the natural order in which a man leads a household. And it doesn't lessen the woman's role, but I think that we're so busy fighting to make sure we have all the same roles that when you enter a relationship and you don't know what role to take, that leads to a lot of the breakdown in communication.
Agree. I totally agree with that. Is this is part of the heavier stuff, the deeply embedded psychological aspects of this. And Nandi and Shagun, we're talking about chapter 5 and how he was highlighting the power struggle between Black men and women and the competitiveness and how he felt that the women's liberation movement was a distraction for Black women.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I definitely think that there's a legacy from slavery of the roles being kind of mixed up in terms of Black female relationships. And I think that in a sense, I feel like I can relate to him talking about the Black man just being used for his sexuality and as a brute, but being stripped of his leadership role within the family. And so because Black women have to lead so much, then I do think we kind of lost some of that vulnerability, some of us, or being even willing or knowing that that's an option to be vulnerable to your partner and be like, I need you, I need your help. I can't, I want to do this with you. That gets pushed into the realm of being weak. And so it's kind of like, I've got to survive. So no, I can do it, and it's like, I think that can develop a clash, and even why you see Black men probably admiring, seeing some of those qualities in other ethnic groups of women who might even have it be culturally that they're more submissive, or just they have the option because of who they are to really get into that. Whereas I think for Black women, we kind of are, I don't have time to be weak or, sad about this for too long, or to wait for you to do A, B, and C, so I'm going to do it. And I think that works against us in some ways in our relationships with men.
I have to totally agree with that. I mean, because we haven't had the option, like you said, I don't think we've had the protection that other people have had, other groups of women have had, period. Mm-hmm. We have been raised to, be very independent. A lot of times we haven't had fathers in the home. And so we don't know what that looks like, And so, like you said, it's just not an option for you to be, very vulnerable. I mean, for us to be even quiet or soft-spoken in our community is considered sometimes a negative thing, and we're taught to be strong and to be, outspoken and all these things that make it difficult when it's time to merge with someone else, to merge, your life with a man. It can make it very difficult.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with both of you on that one. I mean, it's from personal experience. I don't know what it means to be submissive. I'm sorry. I just what is that? What does that look like? I have no idea.
Or even to say I need help, like you saying before, to say I need help, like, it's just like, get it done, I'll get it done some kind of way. Yeah.
Right. Or even that example when you mentioned the father's not in the homes as much. If you've had some kind of father contact or none at all, I think that the father relationship, if it's positive and nurturing, then it gives the woman a sense of who she is in a really strong way and like why she has value outside of her appearance or whatever society might be saying is beautiful about her. The father can provide that kind of thread of, I know I have value. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of protects you from making certain choices for what you're looking for in a mate. So I think there's a lot of psychological stuff that goes on when you don't have the father in the home, but then the woman and her choices. And she sometimes isn't aware of why she's attracted to certain men or why certain energy is coming to her. She just wants to find love and do it,
Right.
And then it can have a lot of negative fallout if you don't get the right, roll of the dice in terms of who you end up with.
And I think the big deal for a lot of us is we don't know what solid, loving, protective relationships look like in a lot of cases because we haven't seen that. Whether it's you were raised by just your mother or just your father or other family members or grandparents because that family structure wasn't there. And I think that's one of those generational curses that we really have to focus on breaking because a lot of us don't know what those relationships look like because we never we were never able to experience those.
All right. I remember working with a colleague of mine that's Caucasian, and she told me that when she was in high school that she would read books that talked about preparing for marriage, finding a husband. And then I remember when I was actually in college seeing that, a lot of my peers that were Caucasian, by the time they were graduating, they were also getting married. And so that was just a whole different mindset that for me, I never read a book about, at that time about getting married or preparing. My mom never talked to me. That wasn't the reason why I was going to college. I was going to college to be able to support myself, to get a good career, but they come with a different agenda sometimes, not that they don't want to be educated and get good careers, but also they're there to find, a husband, a supportive relationship.
It was an ongoing joke. I did my undergraduate at Georgia Southern, and the girls would literally get dolled up to go have lunch in the IT building or the bio building, strategically choosing those men that they're flaunting themselves in front of, and they will tell you straight up, like, I'm here to get an MRS. And that is literally, I'm here to find a husband to take care of me. They didn't care what classes they were taking. They weren't after lucrative majors. They didn't care about them grades, but I'm going to be cute and I'm going to eat my salad in this IT building today. And I'm going to switch to bio to get them pre-med majors tomorrow.
Right.
That's interesting.
And we weren't taught to do that at all. I mean, I wasn't. Anyway, let me speak for myself.
Strategic husband search, you know what I mean? For me, it was just go to school, get the education, like you said, try to get a career. There was never that idea being ingrained in me that you should be looking for this kind of partner or this kind of man because when you get married, it wasn't just a given like that was part of my path, so for me, I had my goals and my dreams. So that wasn't even really on my radar, even when I was dating. Like, I never had that in my mind as always my goal, the marriage. It was kind of like, well, we'll see.
See how it works out.
We'll see, we're talking, and even all the language became, we're not dating, we're talking. And I was like, okay, the watering down of the commitment. So
Right.
Even during coming home, it was not about, are you getting married? It's keep your head in them books now. Make sure you keep them grades up. Make sure that you get the scholarship. Make sure that you are achieving.
Right.
That's very true. Very true.
Well,
I know if I get it to do it all over again, I'm definitely taking a different approach.
No more going to class in PJs and we starting to have lunch.
Right. I gotta get cute. sorry, where the heels at?
Have blood in the right place.
Too funny. Keith, have you gotten over your shyness now? You have anything?
Yeah, I got over it.
So chapter 6 goes into more of how the roles have been changed. The thing that was interesting to me that he talked about was the fact he feels like whenever we have greater numbers, as a collective of coming together, we also become weaker because of the slave method of division. What do you guys think about that?
Did you say because of the slave method of division?
Mm-hmm. The method that was instilled.
I mean, it makes sense in a way. Like you always think that the greater your numbers are, the stronger, like, you'll be because you're more unified. But in our case, it's not. The greater the numbers, the more broken down we do become, because we do keep just repeating the same cycle, but it's because we don't know we're doing it. We're just, sorry, something happened outside my window, but we don't know we're doing it. We just just keep, like, I don't know, this book kind of threw me. I'm sorry.
I totally get what you're saying. I think it's normally because we don't have a particular agenda together. Mm-hmm. Everyone is trying to do different things instead of actually coming together collectively to formulate a plan. And oftentimes you'll also see, like, we're experiencing a lot of this today, even with Biden's choice of VP. And it's like Black people are arguing with each other about whether or not she's really Black, about, her history as a prosecutor, the fact that she's married to a white man, like stuff that we shouldn't even be really focusing on, but it's causing a lot of division. And I think that's something that happens a lot, whether it's with local community organizing. Boy, I could tell you some stories, but it's a lot of the things that we deal with is because a lot of people want to be out front and don't want to do the work behind the scenes. And it's like, if this is your lane, stay in that lane. This is what you're good at.
In that lane.
Right. But people don't understand that. They really don't. And a lot of it has to do with ego. Is a huge issue.
Do you think we should be behind her as a Black group simply because she is a Black candidate?
Now, I don't necessarily agree just because she's a Black candidate we should be behind her. Mm-hmm. Because there is that saying, all skin folk ain't kin folk. People say that, but given what we're dealing with and how the ops operate, mm-hmm. I mean, if we don't get behind her collectively, then we could very much well be experiencing another 4 years of the crap that we've already been dealing with.
Right.
I mean, because there were just, if you remember back to 16, it was just Trump. They focused on getting him elected. Didn't care what he did, didn't care what he said. Right. It was, we're gonna get behind Trump. And that's our goal and objective. A lot of people are saying, let them get in there and then hold them accountable for the things that they say they're gonna do.
Right, but that's kind of what they always say. I mean, I don't like to get too deep into politics because sometimes, but I feel like sometimes there's this idea that, once we get this candidate, then we can be done with 4 years of this that we're dealing with Trump. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of have the perspective, like, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. When you're with a system that's so...
You definitely have to decide.
It's not like Biden can hop in there with Kamala and every everybody's going to be skipping down rainbows after that. It's like,
no, and definitely not. Definitely not if people don't pay attention to their representatives and senators.
Right. So I think maybe that's part of it.
Presidency.
Yeah, of us getting involved, people more on feeling a sense of community on a local level.
Mm-hmm.
That then once you have those small thriving pockets, then collectively we can kind of start branching more out with maybe larger collective goals.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like there's any unity even, you know, in small pockets. Maybe in, I mean, certainly probably more states in the South than like in California.
Oh my goodness.
It's in certain states, there's no sense of, you know, really any community with anyone. You know what I mean?
We can't even get people to focus on local stuff here, period. Like normally our like commission, our commission elections are like 200.
Whoever's watching the news, can you mute your?
You, Kayla, you know.
Hey, I'm here.
But no, like normally our commission are decided by like 200 people because people are not together collectively.
What's interesting.
Oh yeah, who's listening to the news?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me turn it off.
Yeah. But no, we can't get people on the same page. We can't get them motivated enough to understand that this is what happens to you. This affects you when you walk outside of your door.
Right.
The federal elections in Congress are extremely important, but this is what affects you where you live, and people still don't grasp that concept at all.
I thought it was interesting how he pointed out that the timeline and how it lines up with the idea of integration, kind of removing that communal aspect from the Black community. Because it talked about how prior to that, because there was a definitive cause that the Black community came together to work toward that cause, but the civil rights movement, because it shifted from whatever it was about building education or, you know, increasing spirituality, whatever the case may be, that cause was dissolved by integration, because then it became standing out for who you are, and it fostered that sense of independence, because now you have to make yourself seen in white America. And so now you have to be independent. You have to stand out from the crowd. Whereas prior to that, it was all about community, because the only way to improve my life is to improve everyone around me's life.
Right. What do you think about his statement concerning affirmative action and that it devalued the Black male's role?
I had never thought about that, but it hits home, because Black women, we fill both quotas. You have to represent, you know, different colors. You have to represent different genders. You hire a Black woman, you don't need a Black man or another woman.
Right.
But statistics suggest, if I'm not wrong, and I'm sorry I don't have the backdrop of it, but affirmative action actually helped more white women than it do Black women or Black men. And I get from this, and I'm sorry I'm late, y'all. I was having a hard time connecting for some reason. It's like we're sympathizing, or we're having excuses. Like, I'm sure you got on the part where he was talking about the white women movement with the voting and stuff like that, and we Black women, we shouldn't have been a part of that, or that wasn't our fight, or whatever. That blew me a lot, because, I mean, their rights of the white women, I mean, if you look at the level of it, the white man, the white woman, the Black man, the Black woman, that was part of our fight too. Why is it that it affected us in a different way than it did the white people? If anybody understand my question.
I get it, because we were never on that level to begin with. That's
right.
That's part of the reason. We weren't even seen as even being close to the pedestal that they put white women on to begin with.
Right, exactly. I
Well,
agree.
I just remember taking a quiz in one of my business classes one day, and it was like, look at these two pictures, or maybe in three pictures, but basically tell which one is the most diverse. And I just remember it was like a picture, it was like all white men and had like a black woman and an Asian man. But basically, at the end of the day, the group that was the most diverse was all white, but because it had more women, it had a higher diversity quota on there because of affirmative action, including white women as well. So
Right.
because it had more women than this other group, even though it reflected different races, the one with all the women was considered more diverse. So Kayla, that goes into your point on how basically white women were the ones that were
Fit the
most greatly
numbers.
Mhm.
And the effect of, I think there's plenty of things that we can say affected the black family. And I believe in some of the things that Republicans believe in such like the social programs. I feel like social programs did replace the black family. Like I remember watching the movie with my mama, was it Claudette or something? The lady was I think she had like Section 8 or something like that, and she was on the system, and she had a boyfriend, a man in the house, but when the inspection came and they would just pop up, she had to hide her boots and shoes and stuff like that. And that erased the man out of the picture when we get these social programs, because the stimulations where you can't have this man here if I'm here, the government. So there's plenty of things besides affirmative action that has made the black woman stronger. And it goes back to slavery, because like he said, even today, like my only brother, he is spoiled by my mama. Like she and my dad, they go toe to toe about tough love, and my mom is always there for him. And in the black community, you see a lot our black women into baby our black men a lot, and I think that comes from slavery too. But all in all, to blame it on affirmative action, and there's plenty of things that has broken down the black family, starting from slavery. He's right about that, but it's plenty of things such as social programs. He didn't mention that, I don't think. Did anybody read that?
He alluded to it, and I think one of the things that he touched on that he kind of connected was before integration, how we had found a way to reform that family structure. And then after we started integrating, it went back to the mindset changing because of certain things. And instead of the family structure, the men just went back to no courtship, just breeding. Families being separated all over again because of those role reversals. And then, children basically becoming wards of the state, or, having been raised by other family members or single mothers. So I get exactly what he's saying when he's saying that there are certain things about integration that were detrimental to the black family.
I agree. I've definitely heard that, even from people that experience going to all black high school, the all black high school here in Griffin. The pride that they had, the sense of community that they had, that when you then integrate and you go to your Griffin High School, your Spalding High School, you don't have that same sense of protection. I think even from your teachers or your community, and that same sense of pride is not as strong. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So, okay, going back to when it was talking about, how they destructuralized the family unit back in slavery. Why was it that instead of becoming angry at the people who ripped away their security blanket, like we as women turned to them for dependence, turned to like the white male for dependency instead? Was because we had no other choice, or because, like, if y'all kind of get what I'm saying, like they made it seem like, okay, so once they took away basically the protection of the black male, we became more independent. But like he compared us to a horse that when you break her, she'll still come eat out of the palm of your hand or whatever, and teach her offspring to role reversals and stuff. But my thing is, wouldn't you be more angry at the people who's taking away your protection? Or is it like you had no choice but to kind of just play the game how you kind of, well, like try to survive?
Right. I think that's what you touched on. Is all about survival at that point, and we have to understand that they didn't just take the male role away the way they did it. Tarring and feathering and strapping them to horses and splitting them into pieces, or beating them until they were near death, or castrating them. So it was in some very horrible ways that the Black woman was affected, psychologically behind that. So I think, yeah, it was about survival. It's like, do you want this to happen to your children? What do you think she's gonna do at that point? She wants to protect her children.
Sure.
Well, and you've also got the situation that was caused because as slaves were brought over, as they started procreating and the kids became old enough to work, older people were killed off to remove that history. So the only history that slaves grew up knowing was their immediate history, which is why many of us, how we talked last time about the lack of information out there to trace back, like the history was kept away. And if you don't know better, you don't do better. So if all that you've ever known is this goal that was set by your master or whoever you see when you go to the store for master, if that's what sets your standards, because you don't have any history, you don't have anyone telling you stories about how back at home you were kings and queens and you owned this and ran this and you were smart and you had all these capabilities, if you don't know better, you don't do better.
And not to mention, every Sunday, you're also being ingrained with
Pretty much go to church.
Right. You go to church and you're getting these verses that's telling you be a good slave and
Obey your master
the after
and all this. Yeah.
it's a lot.
Y'all, I attest this to my absolute ignorance, but the pastor sermon we listened to today was talking about the difference between white Christianity and genuine Christianity. And you hear people talk about, slaves having Bibles, but like I said, blame my ignorance. But today is the first day that I realized that there was actually a publication. It wasn't that the master chose, I'm gonna give you these pages to read instead of giving you a whole book. There was a published book, the Slave Bible, in which it was redacted to remove anything that talked about opportunities for breaking free. It was all about being subservient and knowing your role, and that was the copy that they had to preach from. So
that's why they don't want you to read. They don't want you to know how to read. They want you to, listen to what we got to tell you. This is how it goes.
Right. And when you did know how to read, I'm going to give you the information I want you to know. And because we are good Christians, I'm giving you a Bible, but I'm telling you that I'm lowering it because you have a limited vocabulary. But in actuality, I removed everything that tells you who you truly are as a person. Like Pastor was bringing up Exodus, where he curses the man that stealeth another man and selleth him, and all that was taken out.
Of course. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. He talked about, to me, he gives so much credit to Willie Lynch when in actuality, Willie Lynch probably, it was the beginning of the inception of it, but there's so much systemic racism and agenda in the system. I mean, even when you talk about desegregation and integration, I can't remember, but I think someone said that Martin Luther King, he wasn't for integration, he was more for desegregation, like, wanting you to be able to go where you want to go, not so much as everybody intertwining, but if you want to spend it here, you can spend it there. And that would have kept the Black businesses up to par. But there's other things that were brought into the Black community that broke down the Black male, even when it come from them going off to war, coming back to no opportunities. You got drugs that was flooded into the communities. And so if I don't have a way to feed my family the legal way, then I'm gonna get this fast money this way. They glorified that, so that built the incarceration. So he did speak on that. So there's so many factors that play a part into the breakdown of the Black community that start from Willie Lynch, but it's so much more to it. And so it's all, how can you break away from that when in 2020 it's still here, you know?
Right.
Right. In reading through this, I don't really feel like their plan, this Willie Lynch letter, was effective. For me coming up, maybe because I don't know why exactly, but I always looked at slavery as a symbol of strength almost in terms of what it shows you can endure and still kind of know yourself and have a pride in yourself, and of others' insecurity in terms of them having to put someone down beneath them in order to feel good about themselves. So for me, it was a lesson in like them having an issue.
Right.
I think a lot through slavery, there was this dual face going on with us acting like we're going along with now the white man is whatever, but really we're just doing that so we can stay alive, or maybe
Right.
get some better food from the house, or steal these books to try to read and educate ourselves and all of that. So I don't think they were effective at all. And I mean, they not I won't say at all. They did get into our heads some because of how long it went on and how horrific and mean and brutal, inhumane it was. But I don't think that they totally, the way he writes it, like they succeeded and now, we're the same as the plantation. I'm like, I don't really agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same as the plantation. I think it's evolved into something else at this point. For example, when he goes into chapter 7 and he talks about the first casualty of war being the truth, and he talks about how white people got their power from the media being dishonest, economic sanctions, and acts of physical violence towards Black people. And how that has, I mean, this was written in 2003, but this is 2020, and we're still dealing with the same stuff.
Right.
And it goes back to when we're talking about, as Black women, how we take care of our children because you're in fear of your son's life. Do you teach them to be mentally weak or physically weak, or mentally strong and physically strong? Or what do you do in situations where you're fearful of them having interactions with other white people or even interactions with the police?
Right.
Because there has been so much violence perpetuated towards them.
Right.
So I think it's evolved to what it is today, basically.
I think it's kind of crazy how no matter what, like we're always the ones getting pushed to the bottom. Like even when he made that, and I didn't really understand until he made that reference to like when Pharaoh had the male babies killed, and I I realized Pharaoh did it because he was fearful of the people growing and stuff, and like it's amazing how we've been in this country longer than a lot of other races, not all of them, but a lot of other ones, but yet they always push us to the bottom no matter what. Like even when it comes to grants and stuff, they'll make sure they give it to other races. Like we don't have access to a lot of things. Even when he was talking about diet, like I never even knew a place called Whole Foods existed until this year. And I never heard of avocado oil chips, and I flipped out when I saw them. Like I was like, what? What? I was like, y'all got some healthy stuff. Like I don't even have one near me. I have to travel far to find one. And I'm like, it's just everything's so structured, even with the red line and everything, like everything is meant to keep us at the bottom. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why do you fear us so much? What is it that you're really afraid of that we'll do? I mean,
I don't know where it is.
Access to the stuff that you have. I still don't understand.
Things that he said, that he says, true self-empowerment has always blossomed from a people's ability to come together first with their own race and family, producing a culture and exemplary way of civilization, and then share those ideals with the rest of humanity. And so I think like that goes into how you were asking about when other people come here, how it's like they don't have as difficult of a time getting up. But a lot of time it's because they come here on a solid foundation. Like when we see foreigners come in from Asia, it's not everybody, it's their smartest and their strongest that they're sending in to be successful. And they come in and immediately flock to their community. communities. Like we all know about Chinatown. We all know about, you know, Little Italy or whatever the case may be. And people flock to their communities because it is in their culture to support one another. It is part of their ideology. Like we all succeed when one succeeds. And so I think that that's something that we are definitely missing because kind of how we hit on last week, like we find ourselves in competition with one another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about in chapter 7 when he talks about, because you were talking before about other people coming here and being much more successful, but he was saying that they're taught to first concentrate on the betterment of their own people, you know, as long as you're not harming groups of people in the progressive process. And I think we lose a lot of that because of competition. You know, when you get someone that makes it to a certain position in a company, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to reach back and pull up my sister or my brother. But some people, you know, have the mindset that, oh, I don't want to see somebody doing better than me or them coming for my job or something like that. And I think that goes back to what's been ingrained, you know, whether you had the slaves in the field or the slave in the house, how they were dividing us, you know, by color, height, size, ability, all of that played into, you know, having this competitive mindset. So I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, I agree. I just think too, like you said, just that sense of community with other cultures is just stronger. You know, that commitment to strong family structure is there a lot of times. That's one difference I've seen as well. Like even in the African community. And then you still just have, because we've been so fractured, you know, I don't know, this was years ago, but when the term African American started being used a lot, you have a lot of people that really don't even agree or connect with that term. You know, they don't want to be identified as African. We're not Africans, you know, so we don't even agree on that piece of it. Or you have a lot of us that, you know, we have no idea what that means to be African. We've been stripped of that history. And so when you don't even have that as a basis or a foundation where you even came from, then, you know, it's not even fair to compare us, I think, to other cultures that when they come here and hit the ground running, it's just two different things totally.
Right.
I mean, that as well.
Well, he was referring to it as basically the shift from pre and post civil rights. How
Right.
when the Black communities were here, how they were working collectively together, and then how once they were integrated, like just that momentum dissipated. Like instead of being that full collective force, like with that common goal, that goal went to independent, okay, affirmative action. They have one spot up there for somebody of color or somebody that's a woman. I have to get that because there's only one. So let me make sure Sandra ain't up there. Let me make sure Shonda ain't up there. I'm not going to tell them about it because I need that. And it creates that competition.
I agree.
Yeah, I think some of the legacy of slavery is a sense of lack, like you're saying, that breeds competition. Other people, I mean, I've seen friends and, you know, people my daughter went to college with that just slide out of college into their careers. And, you know, just, you know, all of a sudden they've got the internship or their dad's friend made a call or, I mean, even, you know, it just works out. They get there and now they're working and then they get a promotion and it just all feels like, well, wow, you know, that if I try hard, I can do that too. But, and so you can kind of get into this weird mind thing of doubting yourself because you study people and what steps they've taken to educate themselves or to prepare themselves for a certain field or career, and you line up the two people and your picture looks completely different and you're going, this doesn't make sense to me. And so we have to always wrestle with kind of pumping ourselves up, you know what I mean, in terms of knowing who we are all the time, because you might get this random hit or you might get some random negative attention or assumption that you're guilty or assumption that you're dangerous out of nowhere, depending on where you land in the world or where you are. and what those people think and what they've been taught. So that's a lot of pressure, I think, sometimes that we don't think about. You know, to really know yourself and feel confident all the time when there's this unseen barrier or attack that can pop up randomly. You don't know where. Right. What do you think?
I think part of the problem too is that Africa is huge, and you talk about like how we don't get along. You think about like the Asian continent, like Koreans and Japanese hate each other. So it's not like they're all getting along, but as Black people, we're all supposed to be the same. But we come from different places, we're mixed with different things.
That's a, yeah.
Hard, you know what I mean? We're not the same.
Right. Can I piggyback off that, if you don't mind? I was going to say that. Maybe it was the fight for freedom that made us kumbaya. I always said, you know, Africa is full of different tribes. Maybe we're in debt. Maybe that's not us. Like, we are individuals, and maybe even during the civil rights movement when we're boycotting and stuff like that, we had a goal, an overall purpose, a collective purpose. And once we got it, yeah, we went this way, that way, and that way. And maybe that's why now it's hard for us to get unified. Now maybe, like he said, we're just like Asia. It's different type parts of Asia. Africa is big. It's thousands of hundreds of tribes in Africa. So maybe this tribe really don't like this tribe, which maybe it could be the East and the West Coast, and then I always joke about that. This a tribal thing. Maybe this a, you know, that's in us, you know, with the gang violence. You know, you don't know what's in us. We don't know. So we have to look at that too. So I just wanted to, yeah.
They don't like each other a lot of times.
Right. The argument is that some Africans sold us. Like certain parts of Africa, the white people couldn't go in, so other tribes captured other tribes and sold them off. So
Right.
Right. It's not kumbaya. It's like it's not. You can look at Black Americans in America and see that we are very diverse in our features, which would speak to whatever our mixes are that came through that line, which was kind of loose in a way, where how much, you know, some families can probably trace pretty far back, but some probably can't.
Right.
You know, so when you say Africa, like you say, it's such a huge continent, so huge that they distort it on the maps to make it look like it's kind of like the other ones, but it's not. It's huge. And so I think finding out with the African American thing, I was always kind of like, I know my descendants are from Africa, many of them, but I see power in being an American in the sense of if we're going to try to truly assimilate here. You know, the distinctions to me are like, they just keep us kind of behind. And any kind of collective moves that we've done that have been public before have been shut down completely. So to me, it's like it can't even be a public thing if we want our own communities or our own businesses or to support each other. It's almost like I don't know how you accomplish it, because it seems like when someone gets big enough or popular enough or moves the people in a positive way where people are fired up about education and coming together and businesses and moving forward, then someone gets taken out.
So he mentioned in the book, another book, when he was talking about the first Black city, I think it was in Missouri or something. Is that the same thing as Black Wall Street, or were those two different things?
Oh, this was different.
Different one. Black Wall Street, I think, was that Haytop community near North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Post-Civil War, there was a lot of Black positive movement toward community building and successful businesses and, you know, just political office, you know, a really large number of Black people involved in politics. So I think we were ready to go for it. We were like, yes, you know, let's do this. And then they just come and, you know, redistrict the areas and build the interstate highway system and separate us again and make us have to go through some more effort to try to build again. You know, and then there becomes the perception of, well, why do the immigrants come here and they're successful because they're not being attacked in the same way.
Right.
And like you said, they send their elite. If you send the elite from Africa, they're probably going to be pretty good at what they do.
The rules are different.
Yeah, the rules are different.
I mean, you have Black universities here after what we've been through, and those benefit everybody. Other minorities can go there. Right. But where are the Asian universities that we can attend? Where are the Hispanic universities? Why is it the people on the bottom who are helping everybody, and then the people who are up only help themselves? It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Also, and also, yeah, it's a perception too. When y'all were talking about people sitting there elite over, if you get somebody from India, you automatically assume, oh, they're super smart. You get somebody from Asia, oh, they're super smart. If you get somebody from like Africa who sits over there elite just to learn and stuff, you don't get that same automatic image. It's more like, oh, you still need to start from the bottom because your resources aren't the same as ours, or even in your own country, or like you don't know as much, or they got that scammer title. It's always, even coming in from another country, like we still have a native association with us versus another culture.
Yeah, they just assume that other is better. I mean, I think I was shocked. I was in Vietnam in 2018 to 2019, and I was shocked by how comfortable they were with their discrimination. Just very comfortable with it, like for jobs or, just, no, sorry, thank you for applying. We're looking for a Caucasian woman, or we're looking for a male.
Oh, wow.
Even on the board, looking for. Same thing with China too, and don't be overweight because you ain't getting a job. Right. Period. I will never forget that it was a white couple that was in training with us when I went to teach in China, and we were going to the office for orientation session, and we had to use the metro. So we were walking through the metro, and the security guards, they stopped what they were doing in order to point out the couple and just start yelling at the top of their lungs that they were fat. Like, now, if that wasn't enough, when we got to the orientation session, they pulled the both of them out of the orientation session and said that they couldn't hire them because the parents would lose their shit, basically, because it's a struggle for us to even get through that whole process over there. But if you got issues and plus they feel like you're overweight, you can't keep up with the kids, you're not going to be energetic or any of that, hang it all the way up. Hang it all.
I was disappointed with China.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were raised, you know what I mean, with the Red Book and believing that they did good against, fighting imperialism and everything. And I went over there and they're going to tell me the parents are mad because you're black. Like, and the way that they do it, like, what are you supposed to do with that? Like, you want to keep me on as a teacher, but you just want to let me know that the parents are mad that I'm black. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So I encountered that in the U.S. So I taught in Alpharetta, and my first year there, I remember because I came from inner city Chicago to Alpharetta, so give you some dynamics. And I remember open house just like being excited, like I'm talking to my counterpart, one of my mentors. I was like, I've never had such parent involvement. Like they were asking about my pedagogy and what books I've read and all this other. And I am genuinely excited because I just came from a place in which if I need a parent to pick up a phone, I got to collect something expensive. That mama ain't calling me back if I didn't take up a cell phone or a hat or something. So I am thrilled. And so I go over there and she was like, and she's a white woman. And she's like, Jasmine, I don't know how to tell you this. She's like, but those parents are trying to decide if they think you're qualified to teach their child. And sure enough, that first year I built my reputation. And that next year at open house, I had nothing but new parents. Any parent that was a part of the community who knew my reputation, they didn't show up anymore.
Wow.
Wow.
There's all these assumptions, and that's what would be really nice to break through. Because I think especially in the professional arena, when you're trying to move up and get opportunity, and that's when I often wish that we had more companies, really like big top 5 Fortune 500 or some of the major player companies or media outlets, just every field where there were more people of color or Black people in particular, because we're going to see something in each other. There's no barrier that we have to get through. It's not a quota we're trying to fill. We're not trying to ease any guilt. We might just see something in you. And I think even subconsciously, they have that with each other. I don't think it's necessarily always racism. I think they just feel comfortable. And so then it's like, oh, you're smart, you're on time. I think you can do this next job. I see that in you. But with us, a lot of times, you have to, well, you haven't done it yet, you know, so let's wait and see, you know. And so there's not that implied belief or confidence in our ability to take on more, to handle more, to get the promotions, to just have that equal footing in society that'll allow us to take care of our families in a better way and be more stable people in the community.
Right.
Especially with black men, especially with black men.
Oh
you know.
yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, I noticed that at, you know, where I used to work at, Yoshunda. Yeah. Well, a long time later, so basically like last year when I had went back for a little while, I'm done with that place. But it was even in that, like, you know how basically mostly only black people work there, even though Indians own it always. And so we were down like I'm sorry, it wasn't last year, that was earlier this year. Yeah. And we were down like a manager or two. That's why they called me back in. But even when I was there, we were still kind of down because it was only me and Mike who were official managers. And you know, you can't run that, so they had to pull Tamara, the catering manager, to kind of cover a shift or so. And so we were telling him, you know, Sam, the newish owner, we were telling him, yeah, Courtney, who, you know, he was here a few years ago. He was great then. He came back a couple years ago or whatever. He's been great. He's been consistent. He's been at his job 6 days a week. Whenever you needed him, morning. I mean, he was prepping. He's doing whatever you need him to do up front. He learned things for you. Well, you know, for the job or whatever. He's always there. He's always trying to help. And he's older. He's more mature. You can see how mature he is. Mm-hmm. And he has great time. Well, he has great time management skills. He just didn't want to use them when he didn't feel like, you know, he would ride the clock sometimes. But he was still a great candidate for a manager or at least a key holder or something. So we were telling him that. And he said, okay, I'll think about it. But when we asked Courtney about it later, he was like, yeah, did he ever approach you? He was like, no. He was like, you know, Sam is racist. And I was like, what? And Courtney was the only one who told me that. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, he's not going to hire me because one, I've been in jail, even though that was passed off of his record or whatever. Well, you know, he's not going to hire his management because he doesn't trust me because, you know, I have a prison record, and also because, you know, because I'm black and he just doesn't trust black people like that. Like, and I was like, I mean, I can't believe it. But then I noticed it later. Sam will walk right, like I said hello to him. He walked right past me and ignored me. I'm just like, and that was before I came back. And I'm just like, really? So it was like, I was like, you won't hire. And he hired some pregnant white woman named Rachel who didn't last before a few weeks. And I was like, you know, you were hired outside internally in your company with somebody who already knows it, who has a skill set, who's been here day in, day out, doing whatever you need him to do. And you just won't elevate him. It doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense. And it's just like, you know, this man could have, I mean, it's a management position. Everybody needs that on their resume, especially, you know, if you got that kind of past. I was like, yeah, I kind of, you know, more than I would have seen it before. It's been other situations too, but, and you know, with Benny, it was similar situations. And yeah, like when he left, it was similar situation. So I get that, like the whole not being able to kind of, you know, not elevating certain people because of the
black people, all of their issues that they have to face.
I also think that comes down with representation on that end too. The same way that we're motivated by seeing someone up there or above us, it gives us something to aspire to. But whenever you look at our white counterparts and they see it and they see, oh, there's only a sprinkle of black females, only a sprinkle of black men, that must mean that they are the exception as opposed to understanding that they are the standard and others just aren't given opportunity. So I think that that kind of feeds into it as well, is that you have to be better than the rest, which is why you got this, which means that no one else can be on your level.
Right.
That's true. What do you think about in chapter 8 when actually I wanted to do this. I wanted to read these questions and people can say whether they agree or disagree, because I thought these were some good questions to ask. When it says, during the time in which we presently exist in America, did Black people gain more power and control over their destiny during the era of integration than during the segregation era? And it's yes or no. Did they gain more control over their destiny during the era of integration or during segregation?
I initially underlined yes, and then I
No.
switched it to no. And my reason for going back was that I think that, as we kind of talked about during segregation, there was that communal thought process. Everybody worked collaboratively together to uplift one another, as opposed to whenever that individualistic mentality took over, it became every man for himself.
Keith, you said no as well?
Right.
I'll say yes and yes, only for the Black people who knew how to take that opportunity of integration and master the game to reach what it is that they needed to do. But then no, for some people, they didn't advance at all.
I say yes based on the economic power that we have. It's just a matter of like pulling that together. In terms of spending, we're spending as much as Italy every year, but none of it comes back. So we either need a nation title, connection to Black banks, or to get some of the money coming back like it did during segregation. But we are in a position to become powerful. It's just getting to that next level.
Right.
Money that we have.
I think having the mindset to go out and get the knowledge, to gain the knowledge, and to get in rooms so you can advance. That's just my experience, my personal experience, just for me. I think we can. It's just some people don't think far enough to think that they can. They think that they need all of this acceptance. That's the difference between us and like white people and other people like Asian. They're always competing. Whether we believe it or not, they're always competing. They're always trying to get in the room. We're kind of just waiting. We're just kind of just waiting. We're not fighting for it. It's just a big dynamic.
Elaborate on that a little bit more, Monique. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What were you saying? Repeat
I
that.
would say, could you elaborate on, you said that we just kind of waiting. I was just trying to understand what you were saying as far as.
I think usually we get stuck in the what happened in the past. We get stuck in the this is what this person did to me. This is what that person did to me. Oh my God, this is an obstacle. When everybody else is like, F that obstacle. Like, I'm going to try every different avenue, lane, whatever I need to. I don't care what I need to do. I'm going to get in there to get it. And we kind of get stuck with the, oh my God, that's an obstacle. Oh my God, this is behind me. And then we get stuck. And then we're like, how are people progressing before us? Now, don't get me wrong. I know that we are living inside of this matrix that they've created for us, this structure. But that doesn't mean you can't navigate through the structure. You just have to have a mindset of, I'm going to get it by any means necessary. Because that's their mindset. If they have to destroy you, they will.
Complacency.
Huh?
Complacency.
Yeah, that's a major one.
Right. I was thinking about how he was speaking about even, during the civil rights movement, essentially gave us issues with Black self-empowerment, which has hindered us from having some type of social advancements. Because I think some of you talked about it earlier, is we had a goal in mind. I think, Kayla, that was you. And then once we felt like we reached that goal, everybody kind of just diverged. And I was like, okay, let's see how this works out. But there was, I guess, it wasn't something that was continuously being driven home. Is that we need to hold ourselves accountable and continue to try to advance and motivate ourselves to be able to put ourselves in positions where we could use the power of our dollars, to do different things. I think complacency had a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, I think once I think that's the issue with integration. The goal was, well, I see that they live better than me. Their life became, most of Black freed our ancestors. That became the goal. I can get the house in the suburb. I can go to college, have a good job. My life looked this way. I arrived.
And now it's being switched up again. Now, you don't need college now. You need to go to technical school.
Yeah, like it doesn't even have weight anymore. So I think it's just that we have these goals, and then you have some people that are stuck there. They're like, why should I do anything else? I have the good job, and everybody else, whatever. But it's actually even more than that. And we're tapping into some of that now. Like, people want to be entrepreneurs. They still don't know the whole dynamics of it, but it's like we're still behind, but we still need to strive beyond what we think a great life should be.
And I think I'm gonna tell you, boy, if I post this online, am I gonna get attacked? But I'm gonna tell you the problem that I have. And this is one of the reasons why, and me and Kayla, we've had this discussion plenty of times. 90, I think we talked about this too. But I've been doing consulting for a long time. But when it came to us, I never made any money because I would either discount or just choose not to charge people for my services if they were in a position where they were trying to start a business or grow their business. This is me, helping my brother or sister advance themselves. But a lot of us do not have a problem with taking money from our people just because they don't understand something simple. I'm not
That's a whole nother live stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the issue though.
You don't have to wait.
Charging people $100 to get an EIN that's free on the IRS website.
Right.
Or thousands of dollars.
Or
And
thousands of
like,
dollars.
I gotta go to the store in a minute.
Figure out what information that I can't rock with.
yeah.
Or charging people so much money to establish an LLC for them, which they could do on their own and only have to pay $100. But now everybody is posting that they have these businesses set up, and I'm like, okay, well, what comes after that? Do they talk to you about the accounting methods? Okay, do they talk to you about what is going to be your exit plan? How are you keeping track of certain things with your business?
Yeah. Like, are you building to sell the business, or do you keep it in the, home? Like, you really have a side hustle that you're calling a business.
Exactly.
You got a licensed side hustle.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't rock with that. I'm like, I've been biting my tongue for the longest behind it. I was like, if I come out and say something, people are gonna get upset. But I decided that, I was gonna sit and do an actual webinar of teaching people what they should know. instead of I got my LLC and I'm good. No, it's way more to it, right? Because if that was the case, then upwards of 50% of businesses would fail in their first 3 years if it was that easy.
Right.
And I just hate when people take things like that and take advantage of people. You know, instead of being like, I'm gonna mentor you and help to guide you to, because I want you to be successful. I want you to see it through. Is I'm just gonna take your money on the front end and you figure it out. You know.
And I think too with us, that's another thing. I know a lot of times, and I have to check myself sometimes in this situation. When you do have someone who does want to come with the real, and you're not gonna hustle someone out of their money, but you're actually the example of what people can achieve. Even beyond that, you're the example. Sometimes you have to find a way to, I'll say it in layman's terms, because sometimes you show with them, but instead of them seeing it as an opportunity of, oh my goodness, that's my sister, she's showing me information that somebody was going to scam me for money from, it becomes this attitude of, well, who does she or he think they are? He or she thinks they're better than me. I'm going to shut them down and not listen to them. Because over here, even though they're scamming you, it's like, I rock with them a little bit better. That's another issue that I think that we need to work on. Like, even for you, like if you do plan on doing that, I wouldn't do it for free because, I've been on that end. Sometimes you and they don't want to pay you, and then they'll go pay somebody else thousands to screw it up, and they come back to you. So I think with your gifts, you should be compensated for your gifts, but also before you even give the gift, to be wise and say, how can I get my people on the mental level that they'll be open to receive what it is that I'm sharing? Even if my gift is my business, my life, like I'm the leading example, but how can I get them open enough? That goes back to some of the things we're saying in slavery and mindset and just Black people being different. Everybody's different. We have to admit it's a group of Black people, our people, are that just not mentally ready.
Right.
And you got to get them to a level to be mentally ready to even be open to receive what it is that you're trying to share with them.
And that could be just based on their background or where they grew up or their income level or what they, had to deal with growing up, what they were exposed to. But I do think that too. I used to talk about sometimes I call it the celebration of Black mediocrity within the Black community. And I don't know if I could see that potentially being a touchy subject in terms of, like, well, who are you to say? And it's not really like me personally, but it's like something that I see sometimes as a collective, like the celebration of something that's not excellent. And to me, it's like, let's make sure that just because it's Black, I'm not going to be like, that's the best thing ever if it's not. Like, I want the standard to be a universal standard, regardless of race, color, background. Just like we have these stereotypes of Asians being smart, or sometimes we want to celebrate something so much just because it's Black. It's like, well, that wasn't really great. And we're not going to be able to, in these arenas, if we clap and give each other a pat on the back for something that's just okay.
I mean, that's true, because you brought up China and stuff. Like, they might seem that they're excellent, but those people be suicidal and everything because nobody celebrates that.
Right. Even
they're like, that's a standard.
In school, high school, they're ready to commit suicide because then their life is over. And I just think that sometimes there are pockets in the Black community where we kind of celebrate that mediocrity. We think it's funny, like CP time, like being late, or not having this kind of professionalism about ourselves when we're doing business, like you're saying, expecting some favor or wanting to get over on somebody. And it's like, we have to make sure that we don't come from some mindset of, because I'm Black, this is just who I am, I'm late. Or I can, it's like, no, no, let's not fall into that trick. You know what I mean? Let's hold ourselves to the writing, reading standard of we can have just as many doctors, lawyers, all this stuff, and not, even the affirmative action. That's where the assumption is that they're not as smart. They got in on affirmative action. It's like, no, just make the playing field fair educationally, and we can compete toe to toe. But I don't want some pat on my back for some weak film because I'm Black.
Yeah, I call that the collaring syndrome. Because I think we've just come from a place where we feel like we've been so disadvantaged. Like how we were saying with the Black sons, how the mothers baby them. I think as a collective, we baby ourselves. Like, let me protect you. So we're just gonna celebrate mediocrity. We're gonna celebrate things that, not saying you shouldn't. Some things I feel like we should honor, but we don't honor. We celebrate it. Like, this is like top level, and it's like coddling our people as a collective versus saying, okay, but you are better. We call ourselves kings and queens all the time, but like, do we really hold each other up to the standard of a king and queen?
And that even got on my nerves
Not
sometimes.
everybody was a king.
Not everybody was a king or a queen. You're the Black people, we were kings and queens. Not everybody. Not everybody. Do you know where these kings and queens are? It's like they say that, and there's no further reading or understanding of their history. Just plucked out we were kings and queens, and now you're gonna roll with that.
It's on Facebook all the time. You got this dude got 10 kids by 10 different women, and some talking about this is my king. It's like, in what? On what?
You gonna water down the meaning of a king?
Of king-like behavior.
No way.
So
in land, I guess that's acceptable.
Your ancestors worked for the king.
So like going back to like education, because even in the book he mentioned that, I think he said something about Black children have to be taught in a Black way. It was something like that. I know you were saying earlier, make it fair across the board for education and all that stuff. So do y'all think like when we did that, that's when we kind of started slipping through the cracks? Because when with the integration of education came, like, I mean, I know we tried to make it, I know we didn't have certain resources. Sometimes when it came to education, we were segregated. And I think, people in the community try to kind of make up for it. But like when we got integrated, either we fell through the cracks because it was some material that we didn't know or couldn't grasp, or that it was like an effort of the teachers to keep us back and like put us down and make us feel like we weren't good enough, or like, do you think we were better off integrated educated, like integrated with education, or like segregated with education?
My opinion, I think when it came to instilling pride and the potential of having the information there for the things that we did and were responsible for, whether it was, in medicine or different types of inventions and things like that. I think that he did touch on that when he said that we lost a part of that because we were in control of our own learning and our own education. And then once segregation, integration happened, that ownership disappeared. Okay. And it became all about what they wanted to teach us. One of the other things I was reading about the Daughters of the Confederacy that had such a huge impact on education in the South was the fact of how they chose to tell our story, being very selective on what they wanted to include in those textbooks for us to be educated about, ourselves. So I think in regards of having ownership and being able to instill that pride in who we are and the things we've accomplished, we did lose that with integration.
And I would agree, because that kind of even goes back to what Jasmine was saying about learning today about, the slave Bible. It's the same thing with the educational system where we were, like you said, we're given the things that they want us to know about ourselves, like where we're only taught about, MLK, just certain standard things. And we're not taught the wider history of what it is to be, a Black American. So, I do think that we definitely lost something. And I think there's also implicit bias that we're always trying to overcome. So when you're in the classroom, with a teacher of a different race, there is implicit bias there. You know, we all have bias, you know. Every person does, no matter, you know, their culture. But when you automatically are assuming bad things, negative things, that this person is at a disadvantage when they can't learn as much, they come from a poverty-stricken background, you know, there's always that thought of Black females being fast, or you know, having attitude or things like that, then you're approaching us at a totally different way when you go into an integrated classroom.
I agree. I think I learned the most about myself when I started taking African American studies courses in college. All this learning from K on up, and I learned the most about myself once I got to college.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, I didn't even learn that in college. Yeah, sadly, I had to learn that on my own.
Yeah, same here. I learned more out of school than I did in school.
Yeah. And I think what that taught me, now that we're in 2020, I think with our parents and stuff, it would be the case that integration kind of prevented that. But now 2020 was having access to everything digitally. I think now a lot of that, I don't even rely on school to teach my child everything. Like, I have to take it upon myself to teach her outside of the box that they've created for her at home.
Right.
I don't think everybody, well, they might understand that now with remote learning, but prior to that, I had to learn, because when I went to college, like I said, I didn't learn anything. It was the world that had to teach me. Unfortunately, I don't think you should have to become 25, 30 before you experience it.
Right.
But I think with us having those experiences now, it's like, okay, that was then, but how can we rewrite that narrative for our kids?
I agree. I think if nothing else that comes out of, you know, COVID and virtual learning is parents having to be responsible for helping their kids.
Kids learn.
I'm telling you, the PTA might not have gotten much, you know, participation, but now it's one of those things where, hey, you got to do it.
Yeah.
How to do it, and it's eye-opening. You know, it's a blessing, even though people think it's not. But it's a blessing, because now you know where you're kind of lacking, and then you can grow together. But I think in 2020, moving forward, that might be the new norm. You're gonna have to learn this stuff about yourself, like as a Black person, and teach it to your kids, because they, you know, you might be their teacher.
That's true.
And the teacher might be the assistant, because that's what it's looking like now.
I mean, this might be the new norm. I know I'm struggling now, because I started with Tamiri last week and homeschooling her, and didn't realize how smart homegirl was. I mean, seriously, I'm you know, asking her to give me the answers to these questions, and she says, you know, it's just something in my mind that just won't allow me to answer correctly.
That's clever.
And you know, too, with us talking about like going to college, and that's not really the standard now. I had to learn with my daughter, and even when I was keeping kids before, now is a prime time for you to learn your child's purpose. Like, you know, we were sending our kids to school because it was like, oh, you know, white people, they were becoming doctors and lawyers, and, you know, everything that was high paying. We wanted to make sure we had the money to live, and we went to college for that. But like some of our kids probably went to school and they were like a teacher when they really were supposed to be like in trade, doing a trade line, like AC. They were the kids taking things apart, putting them back together. They should have been a mechanical engineer, but we sent them to school to play like football or something. Like, I think this is a good time for, you know, we're building a foundation as a Black community in wealth. What are your child's, what's her true purpose? He or she true purpose. You can learn that teaching them at home. There's a reason why your child might not like science. That might not be their gift. Doesn't mean they shouldn't pass, but it might mean that they're supposed to be doing something else, like a writer.
It's true.
Yeah, and I think it's only more accepted now a little bit, just because, I mean, people don't respect you unless you have an educational background. So that's how it was. But now the people are making money doing nothing or just doing something on the internet. It's kind of like the need for college, especially because all this debt that we're in. I know I'm in. It's like, why am I doing all this? And I might not even need this. So like, yeah, now.
Yeah, I think we have to get ahead of this system that we're in, right? So we're thinking about Willie Lynch, and we're thinking about racism and the structures. Now we got to try to be like 10 steps ahead. So they knew that college was an obstacle. That's not an obstacle anymore. It was like, okay, bachelor's, let's throw that master's in there. People get masters, like they're taking Tylenol. So it's like, I get a doctorate. I got like 3 of them, and they're like, oh. So now it's like, I just need somebody to fulfill a need. Black people good at that.
Right.
We have to be 10 steps ahead to be like, I got 10 years under the belt.
Generation Zers that, you know, can just learn how to code and get $100,000 job, you know, being self-taught and like you said, just getting on TikTok or YouTube and making millions of dollars for no reason. Like, I'm totally pissed about that.
Right, because I'm sitting here still trying to save up money for tuition. The tuition free. I'm here like,
these college, you know, and they're like, I just made $1 million popping my lips with lip gloss. What?
And you know, that's another thing too, which might be totally different. But I can't stand how a lot of people of other races are benefiting off of just doing what, like one, like that little take whatever. They do a lot of things that are considered quote unquote ghetto or ratchet, but if they're another color, is something they can monetize on. When we do it, we're just stereotype. And also when it comes to the body parts and stuff like that, when they get their lips punked, oh, they're so beautiful, all this and that. When they do this and that, you're so beautiful. But when we have it, we've been had it. It's not looked at the same way. That's mad. Like how y'all make money off of us? Like it just makes me mad.
I think that goes into us. I don't even know if that's been in the book because I think I got it from chapter 5 through 7. But that goes to us going back home when Yoshunda was like, that's self-accountability. Money's green. So I really don't care what they think. We're not good enough. We're ratchet. They like it. Somebody wants to buy it. Money's green. So if it's your people that gonna buy it from you, you can still be set financially.
That is very true. I mean,
you are
looking at the culture seriously, because you look at how they get all of these lip injections and butt injections and go to the tanning bed and try to get 20 shades darker. I'm just saying, like, they have the culture, they love the culture, you know, they don't necessarily want to be Black for a day. But they love the culture. So yeah, you could make money outside of just trying to have your own people buy stuff. You know?
Yeah, and I think they will, but I think that's the narrative that we have to change. Like at some point, you got to be like, they're the ones that got the insecurities.
And before we got onto cultural, before we got onto like cultural appropriation, like we were talking, well, I think it was Monique was talking about how, I guess, just kind of the mindset and moving forward and moving up. But I think that also starts at a young age, because so back when I was in Georgia, I coached debate. And so I started having a debate class, and I had nothing but Indian students in there. And they started their kids out as young as like 5 and 6 and then into my classes. And I think that as a community, and like that kind of exposed me to that culture, and just seeing the differences in when they're little and they take something apart and put it back together, or they're running around, or they're touching stuff and moving stuff, that is encouraged. Like, but in our community, you're being bad, sit down somewhere. So I think that as far as like fostering those talents and identifying their talents and their gifts earlier, we have to stop telling our kids to sit down and see what it is they keep repeatedly doing, because that's going to give us the early indicators of what their talents are.
Right.
Because I tell you, even from my experience, I was bored a lot in school. not because I was a bad student. I was a great student. I got straight A's. But I spent like 5 or 6 grades with teacher teaching me things that I had did when I was like in first grade. I got to read this book one more time. Then I became a defiant kid. And my mom be like,
Now it's
you got an F on the assignment. I read that book in first grade.
But you just bored. You're not being challenged.
Yeah. And I think that happens a lot to our kids. They go to sleep in class. They get bored. You tell them they must get this A. Maybe they should get a C in whatever class that is because their gift is really in another subject. Or maybe they need to be skipped. Or maybe you need to find activities outside of school to put them in to keep them excited. Mm-hmm. That's when we take back responsibility instead of waiting to say, you know, okay, these are these obstacles from us that they've created, you know, in this system for us. Now we need to step outside of that and say, okay, what can I do to get through this? Maybe I can find another Black person who does tutoring in this area. Or that area and get my child in it. And that's how I'm gonna get past this obstacle versus my child being labeled the not so smart child.
That's very true.
That definitely happens, especially in our area in Griffin. I've seen a lot of people, they even got put in special ed class.
Oh yeah.
And they were actually smart, but they just stuck them in special ed.
I listen to Dr. Umar Johnson. He talks a lot about it. About how kids are labeled as ADHD at a young age. And as you were talking about before, Jasmine, is like what 3 or 4-year-old is gonna sit still. It's like it's not for them to be able to sit still, you know. They haven't gotten to that point of understanding yet. Or if the child is not interested in the lesson, or like I said before, just bored, they're not being challenged. Or if they have an issue with the teacher, it might be because they realize that the teacher doesn't care about them, you know.
Right.
They don't really want to be there. They're just there for the summers off. You know, they really don't care about you know, being involved in their learning. So it's definitely a lot of things. It's definitely a lot of things that have been continuously fed and ingrained in their area when it comes to education. But, you know, we really do need to take advantage of this time and making sure that we're play a huge part in our children's education at this point.
It's crazy because when I was coming up, it was I'm old, but when I was coming up, like intelligence was always supposed to be like hidden, like in elementary school. Like I was on the 12th grade reading level in the 5th grade, and like